Let me tell you about a man named David. He was 32 years old, living in a decent flat in London, working a job that paid his bills but slowly drained his soul. Every morning, the alarm would go off at 6:30 a.m. and he'd hit snooze 3 times, 4 times, sometimes 5. He'd scroll through Instagram while still in bed, watching people living the lives he wished he had. Entrepreneurs sipping coffee in Bali, photographers capturing sunsets in Iceland, authors holding their published books. And David? David was looking at spreadsheets that didn't matter, in meetings that could have been emails, working for someone else's dream, while his own dreams collected dust in the back of his mind. He had a notebook, a black leather notebook he'd bought 3 years ago when he was inspired after watching a TED Talk. On the first page, in his own handwriting, it said, "Start fitness business. Help people transform. Be free by 35. But that notebook sat in his drawer unopened for months. The gym membership he bought in January, canceled by March. The business course he enrolled in, half-finished videos gathering digital dust. The book he wanted to write, still just a title in his head. David wasn't lazy. He wasn't stupid. He wasn't even unlucky. David was comfortable. And comfort, my friend, is the most dangerous place you can ever be. One Friday evening, David's old university friend Marcus came to visit from New York. They hadn't seen each other in 4 years. They met at a pub in Shoreditch, and the moment David saw Marcus, something twisted in his gut. Marcus looked different, confident, energized, alive. Over pints, Marcus talked about his design agency, the clients he was working with, the team he'd built, the apartment he'd just bought in Brooklyn. David felt himself shrinking with every sentence, not because he wasn't happy for Marcus, he was, but because he saw what 4 years of different choices looked like sitting right across from him. Finally, David asked the question that had been burning in his throat. "Mate, how did you actually do it? I mean, we graduated together. We had the same start. What changed?" Marcus took a long sip of his beer, looked David straight in the eye, and said something that would haunt David for the rest of his life. "David, the difference between us isn't talent, it's not luck, it's not connections. The difference is that I stopped lying to myself. 4 years ago, I was exactly where you are now. Comfortable job, nice enough life, big dreams I kept postponing. And one day I realized I was going to wake up at 50, still saying someday, still making excuses, still wondering what if. So I asked myself one question. If I keep living exactly as I am right now, where will I actually be in 5 years? And the answer terrified me. So I changed, not someday, that week." David went home that night and couldn't sleep. Marcus's words echoed in his head. He got up at 2 a.m., made himself a coffee, and pulled out that black notebook. He stared at his own handwriting, "Be free by 35. He was 32 now, 3 years left, and he hadn't even started. That's when the tears came. Not sad tears, angry tears. Tears of someone who just realized he'd been robbing himself. Nobody else was holding him back. Not his boss, not his circumstances, not the economy. Him. His own excuses, his own comfort, his own fear dressed up as being responsible. He opened his laptop and started typing. Not a business plan, not a perfect strategy, just the truth. "I am terrified. I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I'll succeed. But I know that if I don't try, I'll spend the rest of my life wondering. And that's a worse fate than failure." Here's what nobody tells you about change. It doesn't happen when you're ready. It doesn't happen when conditions are perfect. It doesn't happen when you have all the answers. It happens when the pain of staying the same becomes greater than the fear of change. David didn't quit his job the next day. He wasn't reckless, but he did something he'd never done before. He started. He woke up at 5 a.m., not to scroll through his phone, but to work on his fitness business idea for 2 hours before his day job. He studied nutrition certifications during his lunch break. He posted his first YouTube video about fitness, even though his hands were shaking and his voice sounded terrible to him. That first video got 23 views. Most of them were probably his mom. But he posted another one the next week, and another one the week after that. 3 months in, he had 47 subscribers. His colleagues laughed at him.
Still doing that little YouTube thing, they'd say, smirking over their morning coffee, going back to jobs they hated. David kept going. 6 months in, he landed his first online client, someone in Australia who'd found his videos and wanted coaching. The payment? £150. David stared at that transaction notification for 10 minutes. It wasn't much, but it was proof. Proof that his dream wasn't just a fantasy. Proof that someone, somewhere, found value in what he had to offer. 1 year in, he had 2,000 subscribers and 5 regular clients. He was making an extra £800 a month. Still not enough to quit his job, but enough to see the path forward. 18 months in, he was making £3,000 a month from his side business, more than his day job. His boss called him into the office one day and said, "David, I've noticed you've seemed a bit distracted lately. Is everything okay?" David smiled. For the first time in years, everything was more than okay. 2 years after that conversation with Marcus, David walked into his manager's office and handed in his notice. His colleagues thought he was insane. You're giving up a stable job in this economy? For what, some YouTube fitness thing? But David had learned something they hadn't. Stability is an illusion. That safe job could let him go tomorrow. That stable check was keeping him trapped in someone else's vision of his life. Real security doesn't come from a job. It comes from skills, resilience, and the courage to bet on yourself. Now, let me tell you about Jennifer. She lived in Vancouver, working as a nurse. Good career, respected profession. Her parents were proud. But Jennifer had a secret. She was miserable. She'd wanted to be a novelist since she was 12 years old. She had notebooks full of story ideas, characters, plot lines. But being a writer wasn't realistic. That's what her guidance counselor told her. That's what her parents believed. So she chose nursing. Practical, stable, safe. At 28, she was competent at her job, but dead inside. She'd come home exhausted from 12-hour shifts, microwave some dinner, watch TV, and fall asleep. The notebook sat in a box under her bed. One day, her hospital brought in a visiting speaker, a former nurse who'd become a best-selling author. Jennifer sat in that conference room, listening to this woman talk about her journey, and something inside her cracked open. After the talk, she approached the speaker, hands trembling. "How did you find the time to write while working as a nurse?" Jennifer asked. The author looked at her kindly and said, "Honey, I didn't find the time. I made the time. I woke up at 4:30 a.m. every day for 3 years and wrote for 90 minutes before my shift. Was it hard? Absolutely. Was I tired? Every single day. But you know what's harder? Lying on your deathbed knowing you never tried." That night, Jennifer set her alarm for 4:30 a.m. When it went off the next morning, every cell in her body screamed at her to go back to sleep. She almost did, but then she remembered that woman's face. She remembered her own notebooks under the bed. She remembered being 12 years old, full of stories and dreams, before the world told her to be realistic. She got up. She made coffee, opened her laptop, and started writing. The first morning, she wrote 300 words. They were terrible, absolute garbage, but they existed. They were real. She did it again the next morning, and the next, and the next. Some mornings she wrote 1,000 words. Some mornings she deleted everything. Some mornings she cried from frustration, but she kept showing up. 3 months in, she had 25,000 words, the beginning of a novel. 6 months in, she had a complete first draft. It was rough, but it was done. She'd actually finished something she'd dreamed about for 16 years. 1 year in, after revisions and editing, she started querying literary agents. She got rejected, a lot, 37 times to be exact. Rejection number 38 was different. An agent in Toronto loved her manuscript, wanted to represent her. Within 6 months, they had a book deal. 2 years after setting that first 4:30 a.m. alarm, Jennifer held her published novel in her hands. She still worked as a nurse, she wasn't reckless, but she was also a novelist. She'd become the person her 12-year-old self dreamed of being. The critics didn't love her book. It got mixed reviews, sales were modest, but none of that mattered, because Jennifer had learned the most important lesson of her life. You don't need permission to become who you're meant to be. You just need courage. Now, let me tell you the hard part, the part nobody wants to hear. David's first year was hell. He was exhausted, working 14-hour days between his job and his business. His girlfriend left him, saying he was obsessed and not present anymore. He missed birthdays, dinners, social events. Some of his friends stopped inviting him places.
Jennifer's family thought she was having a breakdown. "You're a nurse," her mother said. "Why are you wasting time on silly stories? You need to focus on finding a husband, settling down." There were nights David sat in his tiny apartment, eating instant noodles, wondering if everyone was right, if he was delusional, if he should just give up and go back to comfortable mediocrity. There were mornings Jennifer hit snooze on that 4:30 alarm and hated herself for it. Because here's the truth they don't put in motivational quotes. The path to your dreams is not Instagram-worthy. It's lonely, it's exhausting, it's filled with doubt, failure, and moments where you question everything. Most people quit here, right here, in this messy middle where nothing is working yet, where you've sacrificed but haven't seen results, where everyone thinks you're crazy. Most people go back to their comfortable cages. But the ones who make it, they don't quit. Not because they're special, not because they're more talented, but because they decided that the temporary pain of growth was better than the permanent pain of regret. Let me tell you about Thomas. He lived in Sydney, worked in finance, made 6 figures. Everyone thought he had it all figured out. Nice car, penthouse apartment, designer clothes. But Thomas was empty, successful on the outside, dying on the inside. He'd achieved everything society told him to want, and yet he felt nothing. One night, sitting on his balcony overlooking the harbor, champagne in hand, Thomas realized something that made his blood run cold. He didn't recognize himself anymore. The guy who loved surfing, playing guitar, making people laugh, that guy was gone, replaced by someone who worked 80-hour weeks for money he didn't have time to enjoy, impressing people he didn't even like. He was 35 years old, and he felt 60. That night, Thomas did something radical. He wrote down this question: if I died tomorrow, what would I regret not doing? The answers came fast. Never learned to play guitar properly. Never took that trip to South America. Never volunteered for something meaningful. Never told Emma how I felt about her. She was his colleague, now married to someone else. Never spent real time with Dad before he got sick. Never wrote music like I dreamed. Never actually lived. Thomas looked at that list and realized he'd spent 15 years climbing a ladder leaned against the wrong wall. So he did what everyone said was crazy. He quit, sold the penthouse, sold the car, downsized his entire life. His colleagues thought he'd lost his mind. "You're throwing away your career. Do you know how hard it is to get back into finance? What about your retirement?" But Thomas had realized something. There's no point having a retirement plan if you're dead inside by the time you get there. He moved to a small coastal town, got a simple job at a surf shop, and started actually living. He surfed every morning, learned guitar, volunteered at a youth center, met someone genuine, made real friends who liked him for him, not his job title. Did he make less money? Absolutely. His bank account was a fraction of what it used to be. But for the first time in 15 years, Thomas woke up and actually wanted to be awake. Here's what I need you to understand, sitting here, reading this right now. Time is the only resource you can't earn back. You can make more money, you can build new relationships, you can learn new skills, you can move to new places, but you cannot make more time. Every day you spend in a life that doesn't fit you is a day you'll never get back. Every year you postpone your dreams is a year lost forever. Every moment you spend being who others expect instead of who you are is a moment stolen from your one, single, unrepeatable life. Steve Jobs knew this. When he was diagnosed with cancer, he said, "Remembering that I'll be dead soon is the most important tool I've ever encountered to help me make the big choices in life."
Because almost everything, all external expectations, all pride, all fear of embarrassment or failure, these things just fall away in the face of death, leaving only what is truly important. You're going to die. I'm going to die. Everyone reading this is going to die. The question is, will you have actually lived? Let me tell you about Rachel. She lived in Manchester, worked in retail management. At 40 years old, she decided she wanted to become a therapist. Everyone told her she was too old. You'll be 44 by the time you finish your degree. You're starting over at 40? Rachel said something brilliant. I'll be 44 anyway. I can be 44 with a degree in psychology or 44 still wishing I had one. She went back to school, worked full-time, studied at night, wrote essays while her friends were at pubs. It was hard, harder than anything she'd ever done. But at 44, she graduated. At 45, she started her practice. At 50, she had a thriving therapy business, helping people heal, doing work that actually mattered. Was it hard? Yes. Was it worth it? Ask the hundreds of people whose lives she's changed. Now, let's talk about you. Yes, you, right now, reading this, wherever you are. You know that thing you want to do, that dream you've been postponing, that person you want to become. You're not going to stumble into it. It's not going to happen when you're ready. The stars are never going to align. You have to decide, and then you have to do the unglamorous, difficult, daily work of becoming that person. No one's coming to give you permission. No one's going to make it easy. No one's going to hand you confidence or clarity or the perfect plan. You're going to have to start messy, start scared, start imperfect, but you have to start. Because here's the brutal truth. In 5 years, you'll arrive. The question is, where? If you keep doing exactly what you're doing now, you'll get more of exactly what you have now. If that thought excites you, brilliant, keep going. But if that thought fills you with dread, if that thought makes your stomach sink, if that thought makes you feel like your life is slipping away, then change today. Not tomorrow, not Monday, not when things settle down. Today. David is now 38. He runs a successful online fitness company, has helped over 2,000 people transform their health, travels while working, and wakes up excited every day. His former colleagues, still in the same office, having the same conversations, waiting for retirement. Jennifer is 35. She's published 3 novels, quit nursing, and teaches creative writing workshops. She's not rich, but she's free. Her 12-year-old self would be proud. Thomas is 42. He never went back to finance. He married that genuine person he met, had a kid, plays guitar in a local band on weekends, and sleeps peacefully every night. His old colleagues make more money. He doesn't care. Rachel is 52. She's one of the most sought-after therapists in her city, speaks at conferences, and literally saves lives. She didn't let age stop her. And you? Where will you be in 5 years? That depends entirely on what you decide to do in the next 5 minutes. This story hurts because it's true. It hurts because you recognize yourself in it. It hurts because you know you've been making excuses. You know you've been comfortable. You know you've been postponing. But here's the beautiful part. It's not too late. It's not too late to start. It's not too late to change. It's not too late to become who you're meant to be. Unless you wait. Unless you keep making excuses. Unless you let another year slip by with the same promises to yourself. Your life is happening right now. Not later, not when conditions are perfect. Now. So what are you going to do about it?